I'm Slagle, and I'm making the swordfish with asparagus and little beans from my new book, I Dream of Dinner. This is one of those dishes that comes together easily and is good warm or room temperature. So on those nights when it's really warm out and you just want to sit around with your friends and graze and pick at a meal, this is a perfect thing to make. So I think something crisp and light that you can sip on for many hours is great, like the Sauvignon Blanc from Line39. Tastes great, which means it's time to cook. This recipe starts with a really simple lemon dressing. It's actually the dressing I make kind of every single day for a green salad. This recipe makes a lot of this dressing. You might not use it all for this dish, but it means that if you want to serve a salad alongside this fish, you already have some extra dressing that you could use right on it. When I was developing this recipe for the book, I was thinking about what's like quintessential summer food. And for me, it's some fish that's just not adorned with anything, but just like browned and delicious. Some vegetables, a starch, here it's beans, and then just like lemon and heat. A very simple combination that tastes good with so many things. This is definitely like an extremely lemony dressing. You have the zest and juice of 2 whole lemons, but I think the fish can take it. If you can't take it, if it's too intense for you, I would just add a little bit of honey. And then a teaspoon of chili flakes. As this dressing sits, the chili will kind of intensify, so if that makes you nervous, just add the chili flakes right before you serve it. But usually I would make this like in a Tupperware and just keep this in the fridge for salad on demand. Okay, should we cut some asparagus? This recipe basically has 2 skillet moments. One is sauteing some beans, asparagus, and garlic. So I'm just gonna put the sliced garlic in with the drained white beans. And then I'm gonna thinly slice these asparagus. You'll notice that these are quite chubby asparagus. They're pretty thick, but when you thinly slice asparagus, it works for any thickness, which I really like. The recipes in the book are flexible enough that if the asparagus at your market are not looking great, you can sub in something else. But I generally think what's in season and what's looking great at the market will taste the best, which means less work for you. So I think string beans, anything quick cooking like zucchini, anything like that would work. And actually, it's kind of cool because the grapes in the Line39 wine kind of go by the same idea, which is to use the grapes from each region that are the best by varietal. So the thinking is, if you're using raw ingredients that taste great, your end product will also taste great. All right, and then all of these are gonna go in this bowl. You know, sometimes like people have a million little mise bowls with each ingredient. I don't know why we do that to ourselves, because if all these things are going in the skillet at the same time, they can all be in the bowl at the same time too. And it's 1, 2 less things to wash. So here are some nice swordfish steaks. I really like swordfish because it's really meaty. It's like the closest to steak you can find underwater. But just like with the asparagus and the white wine, the same thinking goes that whatever fish looks best at the store will probably taste best too, so you should go with that. The fun thing about this recipe is you're not cooking up individual swordfish steaks. I think that's really hard to do for a big group because you want to make sure everyone has an ample portion. And sometimes when you have such big pieces, it's hard to get the middle part cooked through. So instead, I just cut them up into 1-inch cubes, and it's almost like stir frying it. But it really takes the pressure off of like making sure that the fish is cooked through all the way. I know that people who have made this recipe have had success with halibut, mahi-mahi, and even salmon. So I think whatever fish you like, you could use, as long as it's firm and won't fall apart as you're stir frying it. If there are no fish near you that look good to eat, I think you could definitely make this with chicken or tofu. I think that would be good. I even would cut shrimp up into little pieces similarly and be able to stir it instead of have to flip each shrimp. When I'm making these kind of like grazing meals, I do like to think about like foods that you can eat either with your hands or just kind of shovel on your plate. And so having everything into these little pieces really makes that a lot easier. Salting the swordfish. And then I'm going to pluck some herbs. This recipe has a large quantity of herbs. I don't chop these herbs because I like to think of them kind of as a salad in the dish. I'm using parsley and dill, but I think you could use any soft stem herb. So mint, basil. I think you could use even tarragon, which it's very strong, so I would use kind of a smaller quantity or in tandem with another herb. Also, these stems are very delicious. They're like concentrated bursts of the herbs. In this recipe, the crunch was not quite right, but I would definitely save them and finally chop them and add them to like a green salad. Sometimes I even put it in the salad dressing. This herb bouquet has had a haircut. Time to cook. So the first thing we're gonna cook are the asparagus, the beans, and the garlic. And a 1/4 cup of water is going in. And what we're doing here is really just warming the beans, kind of like taking off their tinny edge if you use canned, and cooking the asparagus just so that it's like crisp, tender. I actually really like raw asparagus, but I know not everyone does. So this is kind of like an al dente asparagus. Salt. The idea of like eating many room temperature dishes is really common in Italy. There are dishes like camponata or peperonata where it's like very vegetable based with a lot of olive oil, and the flavors just kind of marry as they sit. And you can eat them for antipasto, like with some bread and cheese, which is kind of what we're doing here with this meal. Or you can eat them as a side dish to the main. So you'll see that the asparagus is kind of like this bright green now, and that tells me that it's all ready to go on its platter. And this still warm is going to get a little bit of the dressing. It's kind of the same idea as a pasta salad or any sort of warm salad. You want to dress elements when they're still warm so they kind of soak up the flavors. And then just give it a little toss. I mean, honestly, I would just serve that for dinner. That looks so good to me. I think it's something about how the asparagus is the same shape and size as the beans, but the textures are so different. It's like it's this dense starchiness and then this crisp green vegetable. Love it. Okay, Swordfish is gonna go into our still hot skillet, but we just need a little bit more oil. So what you're going for here is that each side is kind of white and opaque, and maybe a little golden too. That's just like an extra delicious treat. But because the pieces are so small, you can kind of guarantee that once all the sides are white, the inside will also be white, meaning cooked through. The swordfish is just gonna go right on top. This is like truly very lazy summer cooking, but I think with flavors so vibrant, you don't really need to do much more. This is also really just like a great format for a summer meal. The idea of mixing a starch with a vegetable, warming that in the pan, adding a big protein on top, and then just dressing it with a really citrusy, assertive dressing. So I'm gonna add a little more dressing because our swordfish hasn't really been flavored necessarily. It has a flavor on its own, but it could also use some lemon. And then all of our herbs are just gonna go on top. You could definitely like leave it like this and leave it kind of alive and beautiful, but I do think there's something to warming the herbs just a little bit so that they also have a chance to kind of expand their flavor. But generally, I think the leading tones of this dish are like this really bright citrus, these fresh herbs, and I think it works so well with this Sauvignon Blanc from Line39 because it also has those citrus notes, the grapefruit and the lemon. If you ever are like, I don't know how to pair wine, I think reading those tasting notes and finding ingredients that are also in your meal is just like kind of a no-brainer way to go about it. Okay. That's all the cooking I have to do. I'm excited to share this with friends. I think like a lot of people think about summer activities as like surfing, tanning, but to me, my favorite summer activity is sitting around a table with friends, food, wine. That is what I'm gonna be doing.